Today's video, we're going to talk about archetypes, specifically female archetypes. What are they? What do they do? Blah, blah, blah. So let's get into it. Welcome to Thomistic Womanhood. In today's video, we're going to talk about the female archetypes. How many there are, what are they, what do they do, so on. So to begin, I think we should define what an archetype is, what I'm considering an archetype. In my opinion, it's more of a psychological thing. Carl Jung was a big one on different archetypes. However, for female archetypes, and part of what I'm going to be pulling from, these are not ideas that I came up with all on my own. There's actually a woman named Toni Wolff. She, I guess, was an analyst who studied under Carl Jung. She actually became his mistress, believe it or not. But she actually wrote a paper on this. She is the one that really, I think, cracked the code on feminine archetypes from a psychological perspective. I know if you get into spiritualism and some of that, or astrology, there can be female archetypes there, but that's not what we're talking about today. In this is a strictly psychological thing, and we're not going to be getting into any of that. I feel like that's a little, I don't know. So basically, an archetype, what is it? I believe, in my opinion, that an archetype is basically a pattern of behavior. It's a perspective, a way of looking at the world that kind of governs your choices. So as we talked about in previous videos, what is truth? We can throw up a link to that. But in that video, we talked about, how our mind knows truth. We also talked in the video on the soul, how our soul, our mechanism by which we think and choose, not necessarily a religious thing. We all have a soul. It's something that we use to get through life and make decisions and figure things out. But in our soul, we take in certain ideas and it helps us make choices. And different archetypes can be psychological sets of, beliefs and knowledge about the world around us, which influences the kind of choices we make. And these are general themes. I believe there's 4 archetypes. Sometimes people say there's 7 or there's 9. I really believe that there's probably about 4. This is kind of, it's kind of debatable whether there's more, but I feel like a good rule of thumb is when you're looking at the general patterns of how women behave, I feel like they fall into 4 general categories. And so I think Toni Wolff was right. So anyways, let's get into them. So the 4 archetypes are the mother, the Amazon, the Madonna, and what I'm going to call the sidekick, or it's also known as the courtesan. I don't know if I'm saying that word right. Or the geisha, it's basically the female companion. So let's get into the first one, the mother. The mother is it is what it sounds like. She's the caretaker, the nurturer, the healer. Sometimes you can hear healer as an archetype. I would argue that that's a subtype of the mother. That is the side of a woman that is very nurturing and loving. She may or may not have biological children, but it is the part of femininity that wants to incline toward the weak and the helpless. That's the part of you that wants to help, a whimpering puppy, or, water that drooping plant. That's kind of what the mother is. It's the caretaker, the nurturing. It's that self-sacrificing part of us that wants to take care of others without necessarily a thought to ourselves. So that is the mother. And all of these archetypes can have a light side and a dark side. They're not intrinsically good or bad. Just as everything with human nature, we can choose to, use them in a good way or a bad way. And so I feel like with the mother archetype on the light side, the good side, this is the woman that, she's a great mother. She takes care of her friends. She takes care of things, and she's very nurturing. This can be a woman who I could say something maybe a queen that wants to take care of her people. But that is actually a blend of another archetype we'll talk about. But the light side, just think of it as, that mothering, that caretaking. The dark side of the mother is that this can be the part of us that wants to take care of others at our own expense. Sometimes when you have strong mothering tendencies, you can often not really, put your foot down and stand up for yourself. You're so busy nurturing other people, making sacrifices for other people, that you forget to nurture yourself. So that can be one of the pitfalls of it, of being too much in that archetypal pattern, living too much in that frame of mind. So the second one is the Amazon, or the warrior woman. We see a great example of this in the movie Wonder Woman. First one, the one, I believe it came out in 2017. It's not Wonder Woman 1984, it's the first one. And, when you watch that movie, you see a great example of a, Amazonian culture. These women they're training, they're into like archery and weapons, and they're very self-sufficient. They don't need men. They're very aggressive. They're very goal-oriented, and they get stuff done, and they can defend themselves, and they're very strong. Very, I don't want to say masculine, but they have a lot of the qualities that we traditionally associate with masculinity, such as the aggression, the goal-oriented nature, taking initiative, lack of timidity, things like that. And that side of womanhood, I do feel every woman does need to have some Amazon in her, especially in today's world. There's a lot of threats and problems, and we'll talk more about the Amazon in today's world and that in a minute. But yeah, this is the warrior woman, this is the woman who's not afraid to go out there and kick butt. In a way, she's the opposite of the dark side of the mother. The mother is too afraid to really set limits, take care of herself. The Amazon is the opposite. She's very good at taking care of herself, getting what's hers. In careers, you use your Amazon side a lot in the careers in the workplace. It's very aggressive, you have to take initiative. And so the light side of this, the good side of this is, this is the part of you that's assertive. You make sure you don't get walked on. You're not afraid to offend other people if they're offending you, and you need to kind of defend yourself. And also, this is the part of the woman that knows what she wants, and you go after your goals and you take initiative. That, that's the good part of it. The dark side of the Amazon is she can be a little cold and calculating. There can be a lack of softness, and it can be exhausting to be in your Amazon too much. That can be, I feel like the dark side of the Amazon is very apparent nowadays, because as women, in order to have careers and make our way in the world, which is often economically necessary, but in order to do that, we have to take on a lot of that Amazon, those kind of warrior characteristics. And that is hard on a woman. They've done a lot of psychological and biological studies that show when you take on those characteristics, you have a lot more, your adrenaline, your testosterone, you can have that spike in your body. Just like if you do like the mothering stuff, oxytocin, so the way we act can influence hormonal and chemical processes in our body. And so that's why I think if you're too much in your Amazon, you can wear yourself out. That is one of the dark sides of it. You can drive yourself too hard, if you're very goal-oriented and you work a lot of hours and you never give yourself a break. That's the dark side of the Amazon side. Sometimes you just need to dial it back a bit. So the third one is the Madonna. And I don't mean like the singer. I mean more like the Virgin Mary Madonna. This is the part of a woman that is inspiring. She has values. She has morals. She's more reflective. She's maybe a little more mystical, and, she can be very spiritual. This is the side, this has often been called like the oracle, that's an archetype that's been brought up. She's the woman that knows things, and she's very serene and calm. The Amazon can be very aggressive, and there can be like some anger there, not necessarily anger, but like if you've got to go out, if you've got to take initiative, there's a certain energy to that, but with the Madonna, that is a side of us that's more serene and calm and peaceful and like inner peace, that is the Madonna. And that is a very inspiring part of women. When women develop their Madonna side, they can be, they can kind of help point the way for society. They can kind of be like light bearers in a way, and kind of they can illuminate the path for other people. It's a very beautiful aspect of womanhood, and in my opinion, it's very necessary. So that is the light side of the Madonna, the spiritual side. The dark side of the Madonna is she can get a little too, sometimes you can kind of disconnect from reality a little bit. I feel like if you get too into the spiritualism and some of that, if you get too spiritual, you have to have a good grounding, in certain things, and it can be dangerous. There are a lot of avenues for the female desire for mystery, that can, I feel, be misused. That's why a lot of, and I hope I don't annoy anybody. Some people might feel called out. I hope not. But some of the new agey and like tarot cards and things like that, sometimes, Wicca, like witchcraft, some of that stuff, there is a certain mysterious, mystical aspect to that. And I feel like that is taking that female desire for, something spiritual, something mysterious, and it can kind of route it into a bad point. There is plenty, there is plenty of like mystery and stuff in, like religions and things like that. But sometimes you can take it into a kind of a weird direction. So that can be a dark side. The last one is the sidekick. And again, we don't really have a word for this in the English language. And this is basically the woman in her capacity as a companion to men. And so this includes, basically, just getting along with men, figuring out, understanding them. In Japan, we see this a lot in the geishas of Japan. These women were like basically professional companions for men. And I know there's some debate about whether they were like prostitutes. So it sounds like history says that most of the time they weren't. But we'll see. That's kind of an open debate. Maybe that's another video for another time. But yeah, this is like the sidekick for men. This is, when you're in a relationship, like the girlfriend, that could also be part of this. You like men, you want to be around them, you want their love and affection. And so, you work to make yourself pleasing to them. You want to look beautiful. You try not to be too needy. You try to put yourself in situations where you'll meet men. You really want a boyfriend. That is this like sidekick. Yeah, just basically like the female sidekick or like the feminine companion kind of archetype. It's where you really want to connect with a man. And we see that in, a lot of us women, we all, not all of us, not every woman wants to have a man in her life, but, I'd say most of us do. And so this is that instinct, that instinct to kind of couple up. I'm not going to get too into it. I want to keep this G-rated, but sexuality is a part of this as well. That physical union with a man, that connection there. And so that can be part of this too. So on the bright side, the good side of this is, our ability to connect with men and become, wives and companions for them. Men get a lot of good from being involved with women. It kind of helps give meaning to their life. Men, I think they'd lead pretty empty lives if they didn't have women in their life. So yeah, and I think a lot of men feel this on like kind of I don't want to say metaphysical level, but like kind of on a deeper level. A lot of men feel like they need a woman in their life to really kind of like feel fulfilled. And, a lot of us women, we feel like we need a man in our life. It's really loaded to say like to feel fulfilled. But, a lot of us feel like, I do want a man in my life. And that's kind of what this is. And so this is that drive and that incentive, to help us figure out men and, and all that. So on the bright side, this can drive a very close and loving relationship with men. This is also the desire, I mentioned it earlier, but this is the desire to look beautiful. This is us when we want that male attention. So we want to look really pretty and we want to do our hair and we want to make sure we have a nice outfit. Oops, I just like rocked my camera. But yeah, that's what that is. So on a dark side though, This can be like the seductress. This can be like the slut. You want to connect with men a little too much, maybe too many men, and that can be the dark side. Sometimes that desire for male attention, that desire for male connection can get out of hand, and that can kind of mess up our life. So these are just food for thought. It's kind of worth thinking about which one of these archetypes you find yourself living in the most. What is your kind of natural orientation? Depending on our personalities, we're all going to kind of gravitate toward, I would say primarily one, but secondarily another one. I feel like we're all going to be a blend of predominantly probably about two of these. Ideally, in my opinion, just my opinion, I do feel like you should try to be a balance of all four. And if you're interested in like relationships and getting a boyfriend, I feel like if you want to attract a man, you really need to be a balance of all of these. A guy wants a woman he can't step on, that she's going to have a healthy self-respect and she's going to put him in his place. That's the Amazon. On the other hand, he doesn't want the dark side of the Amazon where you're like a ball breaker. On the other hand, he wants the sidekick. He wants to have kind of like a playmate. And I don't mean like a Playboy playmate. I mean like he wants a companion, someone that he can have fun with and who understands him and brings like that joy and lightness to his life. He also wants someone who's nurturing and kind. And then he wants, the Madonna, someone who's inspiring, someone he can look up to and he feel inspired by. And so, I do feel like it's important to be a blend of all of them. And having said that, I feel like in society, we have very much kind of forced women into an Amazon role. I think, because of us, we have to do careers. I feel like it can be hard for us to develop the other parts of our personality, which, maybe is another video for another time. But I do feel like in today's society, we often have trouble attracting men. And I think it's because we are often in our Amazon side, or we've gone too much into the sidekick side. Nowadays, careers are encouraged, and I don't want to say some promiscuity is encouraged. There can be a lack of morals, a lack of values, and that can be bad. So the Madonna side of women is kind of suppressed. And I do feel that you need to have a certain softness, to attract men. And I think that's how the Amazon can be difficult. When you're in that like warrior woman kind of frame of mind, it's hard to connect with people. It's hard to bond, because you have to kind of like let people in. And this isn't even just with men. This can be with like children and things like that. So I don't know. This might be a video for another time, but I do feel like in our society, we encourage women to be very like Amazonian, and we kind of suppress. And the sidekick part of us is really only encouraged from like a sexual perspective. I feel like they're like, be beautiful, be hot, you have to connect with men like on that physical plane, but there's not really anything deeper to that. You want to attract a guy with like his heart, not just his body, like you want him to want you on like an emotional level, not just a physical level. And so, I feel like, I don't know, those are the archetypes, and I don't know what else to say about them, but I feel like it's food for thought. I think this is all part of like knowing ourselves, and we can kind of like take an inventory and ask ourselves like, what archetype am I overutilizing maybe? And which one do I feel like I need to develop? Where am I weak and how can I fix that? So anyways, food for thought. I hope that was helpful. So if you like this, like, share, subscribe, do all the things, and I'll talk to you later.